This is Black Market Leadership, the underground resource for disruptors and status quo breakers.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Black Market Leadership. I am very excited. Today, we have a fantastic woman. I've known Beth here for, I don't know, over a year, something like that.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah. Beth Lebowitz, the ultimate disruptor in Scottsdale. She's a trailblazer, and she is here to talk to us about the concept of disruption. I personally love disruption. And, Beth, as you know, I teach military history, and one of my favorite subjects is Napoleon. And Napoleon was the ultimate disruptor, so much so that he drew 7 nation coalitions against them. So he drew some fire for all his disruption. But I love the fact of creativity, change, all the things which are really go with disruption. And the fact that you've done it with Auxana, an outsourced general counsel company, to me is just fascinating, especially in the legal field. When I think of legal, I usually don't think of innovation. I think of, rules, lots of words. And every time I click a word, I hear money going out my pocket. So saying that, today the subject is disruption, and let's jump into this. So before we go into Auxana, let's learn about Beth. Come on, Beth, tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, I think you gave me an excellent lead in here, Kevin, because, when you think about the legal industry, and I'm a lawyer, and when I went to law school and decided to be a lawyer, I never thought about disruption or innovation or anything like that. And I'm also part of an industry where it's obvious that disruption is needed. You teed that up very well as well, because, if the non-lawyer says, oh, I've got to think about legal and all I think about is ka-ching, that's a problem. I think we have a lot to talk about today, a lot of really interesting things with disruption and what I'm trying to do. But a little bit about my background. So I was not the young kid who said I'm going to be a lawyer one day. I grew up on the East Coast, went down to New Orleans for undergrad, went to Tulane University, fell in love with music and met my husband and, graduated and unfortunately was the first graduating class after Hurricane Katrina. So was looking also for another city to live in. And so that's how I ended up in Phoenix, where I'm at, and was involved with politics, media relations, things like that for a while. Wasn't really finding the career paths and the challenges that I wanted. So I guess I got what I wished for. I decided to go to law school. Started working with some really cool companies, did a lot of transactions, worked with startups, helped them raise money. As part of that and leading into the disruption, I started to see all of the problems inherent in the traditional practice of law, in the legal industry, how companies consume legal services and how attorneys provide it. So that was the impetus, and I'll let you kind of target some more questions here, but that was really the impetus for leaving the traditional practice, starting my outsourced general counsel practice with Nimbus, and launching a startup, Auxana, last year, and another startup called Contract Moxie. So I've got the disruption game pretty well played here, but that's kind of my background in a nutshell.
First of all, congratulations! Lots of success, lots of continued success. I think one of the most important things we can talk about. It's one thing to say disruption. I want to be a disruptor. It's another thing to do it. And, you and I, we've talked a lot about behaviors. We actually did a behavioral profile on you. So I wonder if you could describe to the audience who you are behaviorally. Like, what kind of person are you? What kind of person starts all these companies, first dives deep into the field of law, again, with all its rules, all the regulations, all these things which, to me, it seems like a conceptual briar patch. You're stuck in there. You can't get out of the law. The rules are there. But that's what you've done. You've actually broken out, I guess, in a different way to start showing that kind of innovation, breaking out of maybe artificial rules. I don't know. How would you describe your path here?
Well, to answer your first question, what type of person? A crazy person. So I do think there's an element of crazy and a little bit of this. But ultimately, and I'll take one step backward here to just give the audience a little more description of what I do. So I killed the billable hour. I don't believe in the billable hour with providing legal services to companies in an in-house type role. So as an outsourced general counsel, companies that are earlier stage, so before you would ever think about hiring like a full-time in-house attorney, they can hire me or one of the outsourced general counsel on the Auxana platform on a flat fee subscription basis to be their part-time GC essentially. So it's a huge value add for companies earlier on in their life cycle than they previously would have been able to access. And I really talk a lot about it being like, a problem with the legal industry being that it paints with a broad brush. And so, here's the big law firm and the billable hour, full stop. What I've done is said, yes, there's a place for big law firms in some instances, but in a lot of instances, you need a strategic legal partner or you need recurring help. And your only option before then was to pay by the hour to the big law firm, which makes no sense economically. It rewards inefficiencies. Or you hire a full-time attorney, which the recruiting process is really challenging and difficult. And if you're an earlier stage company, you simply can't afford it. So, that's really how what I do came about. And that's what I do through Nimbus and what we're trying to make available on the Auxana platform. So to bring that back around your question, I think, what that took as an individual and looking at this and figuring out like, okay, I need to leave the safety net and the security of my law firm job and go do this. I think it takes a person who, one, obviously needs to see the problem. If you don't see the problem, then what are you disrupting, right? So you have to see the problem. And I talk to a lot of startups in a mentorship capacity also and kind of helping with this. If you haven't felt the pain and then actually tested on the solution, what are you starting a company for, right? Like so many startups fail because I believe they haven't solved this fundamental first step of like, do people want what this great idea is? And so if you miss that pain and solution part of the equation, then you're starting out of the gate anyway, being incremental and possibly not valuable at all. And so what I did is I experienced the pain. I talk a lot about this. I had the opportunity of working as an outsourced GC with a big client while I was still a traditional lawyer. So I was able to really compare and contrast and build out this model. And then you create the solution and you make sure it works, right? And so that's the precursor to disruption. If you haven't done that, then what are you disrupting? So you understand your solution, you understand the pain point, you've tested it and you understand that this works. Then you get into the behavioral qualities and the leadership qualities of, okay, am I willing to be the person to risk things? Am I willing to be the person to, again, leave the salary position, leave the partner track, and actually, get out there and do something that's completely different. That takes a personality type that is aware, I believe, that doesn't need perfection and that's not afraid of failure. If you're afraid of failure, you're not going to do it. If you think, and we could go down rabbit holes on this, right? Like if you think every last little thing is going to have a solution and going to be perfectly solved with a little bow, you're going to drive yourself crazy or just not do it. And I think awareness was the last piece that I mentioned, like having the awareness. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people just kind of go through life without, saying, oh, this is something that's really bad that could be changed and here's what it could be. So I think, those are what I would call like the three kind of main triggers based on my personal experience. And I think what you need to get started.
So when I originally asked that question about, your field and going to business, I was trying to suggest that I think a lot of people out there conflate the nature of the work versus the nature of the business. Again, when I think of lawyers, I don't think necessarily of innovation. I think of some people who stick to the rules. And I thought, or at least a long time ago, I thought until I met, innovative people like yourself, that that kind of work, that kind of methodology bled into your life of how you conduct business. But that's not true at all. I've met many engineers. People think of engineers as techies, as so detail oriented, but there are other people who are in that same field who are profiles like yourself, who are easily innovative. They like change. They tolerate a lot of the details and the need for perfection, but they're able to, I guess, navigate it. And I guess that's one thing that's really you've been so successful in the fact that you're in a very detail oriented. I mean, am I wrong that every word counts in the legal field?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also easy though to conflate a few things too. So I am being disruptive on the model on how lawyers provide legal services. You can't disrupt the law necessarily, right? So the law is the law. I mean, I will say, I don't want to get too technical, but I will say, I think a good lawyer, especially a good business lawyer, is not, you read the black and white letter of the law, but most of what a good business lawyer does is give strategic advice. So it's much less about a strict technical reading of the law and much more about, explaining the law and how we can mitigate risk in other ways and how we can make strategic decisions and, understanding where your risk profiles are and what decisions you're going to make. There's just so much that goes into a good outsourced general counsel that's not black and white. But to be clear, I can't go to the Arizona revised statutes and say, oh, we're just going to not do any of that. So just to make that distinction. But it is, and I think, what you're getting at is about the type of person who decides to be a lawyer, and then the type of person who decides to start a business. So I've kind of filled both of those buckets, again, totally unintentionally in some ways, didn't see it coming. And that does take a person, I think, with those leadership, but also those just qualities that we've been discussing. And I think, it's interesting. One of the biggest compliments I've kind of received is I talk to a lot of big law firm partners, and, founding partners of different firms. And more than once, Kevin, I've been told, you're going to put my firm out of business. More than once. And I find that really provocative and really interesting. And I disagree, to be clear. I think that there is a space for firms, not as many as we probably currently have, but there will always be a space for big law firms and very, specifically trained technical attorneys, obviously, and the traditional model. My point's always just been that we shouldn't, just say, here's the one model that fits all scenarios.
No, that's a great distinction you made. And I think, you made a point about being able to identify the need out there. In a sense, if there's one thing that I've always respected about law is definitions. Definitions is an art and science definitions, but it's about identifying the essential characteristics of something, of a thing. And that takes a little nuance. And the fact is, I get you're not changing the law, but the fact is you made it very clear you're changing a particular model. And it's that kind of laser-like focus I think people out there need to understand, that if you want to evoke change or create something disruptive, you got to be crystal clear on exactly what it is. Don't be broad stroke. Get very clear. And, I just need one example. The one thing I've learned in my industry, look, you know me, I beat up my industry all the time. It's fluff. It's like cotton candy. It's fluff galore. And so much leadership training is just training. It's death by PowerPoint. But the one thing that's missing, the one thing that I love doing with the wargaming is providing experiences. So that's, in a sense, the niche, the way to actually get that competitive edge. But you got to be able to define the problem, define what it is, and really, really see with a laser-like focus. And for someone like me who has no patience, I find that it can be challenging. I like the challenge, but having to concentrate too long just makes my head hurt. So now you mentioned something interesting too. I think this actually really supports your ability to be disruptive. You're a big picture thinker. You're a high dominant and you are very fast paced. In fact, if I would say behaviorally speaking, your highest and lowest traits are your high D, your big picture, you're aggressive, you're competitive, and you are extraordinarily innovative. I think those two to me are a great, great mixture that lend to be able to be disruptive. Have you noticed? I'm sure you have, but can you tell us about? Have you been around other people who have tried to be disruptive, but have not necessarily been successful?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And I think, and I was thinking about it in terms of the qualities, and I don't know, and you're the expert on this, so I don't know how to really assess the behavioral qualities, because I've certainly met plenty of startup owners who had all of those things that you just described. They were competitive, they were highly dominant, they were big picture, they were willing to take risks, all these things. That's why they were startup founders. But they'd missed that critical first piece that I described to you, which isn't behavioral, I don't think, but you can correct me because you're the expert there. They'd missed that first piece of like, what problem am I solving? And do people want my solution? / does my solution work? And so, that's why I say, like, if you miss that, you can be all these perfect qualities for a disruptor and still, start a project or start a company or create a product that ends up not being disruptive because you didn't think about that first critical piece.
Yeah. You have to be able to look out. You have to be able to look out in the world. And, I had a discussion recently. We're going to throw a little philosophy in this. I throw military history, philosophy, whatever I can. But Ayn Rand had this really great focus, I should say emphasis on two kinds of mindsets. There's what you call the primacy of consciousness, meaning the mind, and primacy of existence. Primacy of consciousness means there are people who reality is what they think it is. I know there's a need in the market. I just feel it, Beth. I know it. And I'm going to put my money and resources and time into it. And then lo and behold, there's actually not a need. But it's that primacy of existence. It's the fact that you realize I'm a part of this world. In order to survive, I have to look out there to see if there is a need. I want to do it so much, but there's not the need. Either I don't do it or I create that need. But I realize it's not going to be that easy. But it takes I think it's really hard for some people sometimes to go out and actually focus. My heart's in this. I know this is my hobby. This is the thing I really want to do. And I want to be disruptive, but they don't do the homework, and that homework can cost you.
Yeah. And then when I think about it, there probably is a behavioral element of ego. And when you described that, it kind of became clear to me too. And it's not particularly flattering, unfortunately. But I think if you have a certain amount of ego, to your point of like, well, I know it, it's not founded on anything, but I know people want this. That's not a good thing. So I would also say about me and those who know me really well, and I don't know if this came up on my behavioral profile, but I'm very humble. I don't carry like ego. I don't carry fear of failure, and I don't carry, it's my way or the highway. I know I can be I can be a steamroller sometimes when things need to get done. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the good disruptor, the good leader needs to be able to say, okay, what I thought was true isn't true. Empirical evidence is showing that it's not true. And you have to make sure your ego can see through that. If your ego is, I know I'm right, and you start collecting all this evidence as you go around and saying, no, you weren't right. You have to be able to have the humility to say, I wasn't right. And now let's, go down another path and iterate.
I mentioned to you earlier that we just did a analysis on the on the movie Moneyball. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. Brad Pitt's in it. It's awesome, but it's about disruption, and it's about a guy, plays Billy. He plays Billy Bean, the GM of the Oakland A's, and how not just he wants to disrupt the industry. And this is going to go to my next question. It's what's so fascinating about the movie is guess what the first step is? He defines the problem, the need. He defines it. So he ultimately he ultimately understands what it is, what needs to be done. He finds a solution with Jonah Hill's character, Pete, and they have it. But guess what? Now they got the solution. They've identified the problem. But guess what? They have to bring people along to do it. And just because you're comfortable with change and disruption, as a general solution versus just being so specific and the 99% solution, just because you might be comfortable with that and I'm speaking generally here, does not mean the people supporting you are. And I think that might be another challenge. Do you have any experiences or any feedback on the fact that how do people around you supporting you reacted to disruption?
Yeah, and there's so much here, right? So I'll bring out, the lean startup, because that's something that every entrepreneur reads. And what I thought was really interesting when I first read it was entrepreneurship and innovation and disruption, like I won't say most, but a lot, or at least 50% of the examples in his book are inside massive companies, inside QuickBooks, inside these other companies. And I hadn't thought about that before the first time I read it. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, right? So we're not just talking about baby startup company over here. How do you disrupt inside? And the reason I bring that up is because I think it's really relevant to your question. And I think it's where you find some of the best examples. So in those situations, companies that have a lot of red tape, they have to find behaviorally the right person to lead that, knowing that not everyone they're going to put underneath him or her to make this disruptive thing happen in the big company is going to be a disruptor. I mean, for those things to be successful, in my opinion, well, there's a lot to it, but in my opinion, one of the main things is picking that right leader, because the right leader is going to be able to be disruptive inside of a big organization, but they're also going to be able to motivate properly the people underneath them and select other disruptors. So, these teams are agile, and I think it's pretty, like the QuickBooks one is top of mind. I mean, it was one person said, okay, you have to go fix this problem. And that person had to be incredibly disruptive, had to have free reign to make mistakes, had to have free reign to say, like, we're going to scrap this process. It's making us hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. That person also, to your point, has to be responsible for selecting the people that are going to work with him. And again, this is where I think what you do is so valuable. There's a lot that goes into that. And I think if you get, sticks in the mud, that obviously isn't successful, but you don't necessarily also want a whole team of disruptors. You want people who are going to do what you need them to do and be willing to, it's going to come out the wrong way, I guess, but, not ask questions, not be the engineers who are like, well, I can't, not do things the way I've always done it at QuickBooks. I can't do that. So you don't necessarily want to be, sticks in the mud like that. But I think you also need people on your team who are like, okay, this is what you've asked me to do. I'm going to go execute on it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. So how long has Auxana been in existence?
We launched really live we just had our 1-year anniversary. So October of last year was our kind of out of beta pilot mode launch. We started with the idea at the beginning of last year. So it's a very, very early stage company. So we're kind of, to carry on the conversation we've been having, I know the solution of outsourced general counsel works, but we're really, iterating and testing on the model of how do we create an organization in the legal industry that can scale that idea.
So you're continually learning and developing as you go, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%. So what I know, so it's been a year, and look, you guys just had the Auxana Summit, which was awesome. I can't believe all the talent you brought in there. And so my question to you now is, what's been the reception to Auxana?
What I'm most proud of is, and it's hard to put your finger on, but what I'm most proud of is that people trust us. The legal industry, and particularly my, what I would call the closest competitors to what I'm trying to do, have had really big problems with trust. This is all public information. I'll try to do this without naming names, but there's big companies have gone out of business this year that were in my space and competitive. There've been a lot of lawsuits. There've been, a lot of attorney unhappiness because of the amount of fees that these companies were charging. So for me, it was very important from the beginning to be just like fully transparent. There's no revenue share. Auxana is not a law firm. We just want to grow an attorney base in a community that does outsource GC. We want to train them how to do that. We want to provide business development. And we're going to go out and find the companies that want that. So, so we've been very kind of transparent and intentional on not falling into those issues. And I think we've been successful at that. I think people, again, it sounds super fuzzy, but I don't know how else to put it. People are like, oh, this is refreshing. This is kind of like, I trust what you're saying because you're transparent and you're not, oh, I'm taking 20% here and 50% here and blah, blah, blah. We don't do any of that. So I think there's this element of trust and oh, this is refreshing when we talk to people and when we get attorneys signed up. And that's been something I've been the most proud of. And we're also, we're finding the right attorneys, which is also really great too. So I think, we're attracting former GCs of big companies and these really qualified attorneys. And so, we work on our business development efforts, giving, at least facilitating the opportunity for early stage companies to have access to this caliber is also really, really cool. So the reception has been good. And I'm proud of those two things. And I think we're really in that, like, continuing to grow and really define and refine what we're doing, which is exciting.
I tell you, speaking about just being open, you and I were working on the trust initiative, which I just think it's such a cool idea. I've never heard of a law firm doing this. Auxana has rolled out the trust initiative for those who are not aware of this. And it's fantastic because what we do is we do a behavioral profile on potential attorneys. And this allows the company to say, hey, this is who I'm working with. This is John, Sue, Maggie, and they can see exactly who they are behaviorally, meaning how compatible is this person to what we need as an organization, to our culture. And so in my view, I think it's a huge leap and bound and really showing this is who we are. We're being extraordinarily transparent, being very authentic. How can we help you? And I love it. I told a lot of people about this, and I think just the fact that you're so willing to show, look, John over there has a great CV. Sarah has, a good CV, but you know what, Sarah, she might be more compatible. I feel safer going that route. Again, congratulations on just making that option available. To me, it's just, I love it. I love it. Talk about disruptive. That's
yeah. Okay, so you and I met whatever it was about this a year ago. Oh no, it's been closer to 2 years. This 2020 has warped all sense of time. And we were having a beer and seriously just idea explosion. I am super excited about it. We're still again refining, want to get this off the ground. And what's super interesting is I don't know of another example where, as an industry, we say, here are experts, here are this elite group of people. And by the way, because you are bringing somebody inside your company, behaviors matter, compatibility matters. And you don't have to go through the traditional headhunting process and go through here's all these tests. We're going to do that for you. And we're going to show you what this person is and is not. And one of the things I'll announce here, it's not really that known yet, but one of the Q4, Q1 initiatives we're rolling out is this concept of badging for attorneys. And there's a lot of really cool, lots of cool things that we don't have time to go into now. But for purposes of Trust Initiative, that's one of the badges. So attorneys will be able to search on Auxana who has a Trust Initiative badge, right? I only want to see those attorneys. And then I can actually see, what it's not just about where they went to school, right? It's about, well, how does this person work with a team? Most companies are transitioning to fully remote for the foreseeable future. How does this person work remotely? What sorts of behaviors go into that? And I don't know of another example of a company who's doing that. And I think it has the potential to really be disruptive in the recruiting space, which is kind of exciting. And yeah, it's really cool. I've loved working with you on that.
Well, look, you talk about disruption. I feel like you're attacking disruption from 3 or 4 different angles. So when you go all in, Beth Lebowitz, you go all in. You're attacking it from everywhere. It's awesome. For those people out there who, they have a great idea. They think they have a great idea. What are the lessons or tips or recommendations? And I think you've already mentioned them, but maybe we can go through them just one more time so people can really process. If you want to be disruptive and take that route, here are the things that you have to pay attention to. So could you give us any recommendations or tips?
Yeah, absolutely. Before you do anything, what are you disrupting? Right? Like you have to take a step back. And I think it's interesting because the behavioral profile of disruptors is probably like charge ahead, let's just go do this. And that you have to check yourself and you have to rein that in, because if you have not defined a clear problem and a clear solution that you have tested, that you know solves the problem, you are dead in the water. You may be an expert disruptor, but you need to go marry or, match up with somebody who has the idea, the problem and solution defined, because on your own, you're not going to succeed. So you've got to go through that step first. I can't overemphasize how critical that is. Every startup I've personally seen fail has failed at that very preliminary level. And then from there, the tips and tricks is I think from a behavioral standpoint, which we're talking about, is, being able to see when it isn't working. It's related to that first point, right? Like, yes, you have to be the charge ahead, not afraid of failure, willing to take risks person, but not with blinders on. And so not subject to your own ego. So you have to be able to see when it's not working.
So let me, something that I want to ask you, because you mentioned that when you decide to take, to create Nimbus, to create Auxana, one of the things we've talked about before is motivators. People act for different reasons, and that usually changes per decade. But I feel like, the things you took on, that's a lot. I mean, good Lord, again, hats off to you. But I'm really interested in going to this. Can you take us through what was your calculus, your internal calculus of, am I willing to take these risks? You have a husband, you have a family, to me, it seems like, gosh, it could be risky. How did you talk yourself through that?
Well, and I had my second daughter last year during the middle of all
wow.
Of this, a year and a half. So yeah, I've actually talked to attorneys about this a lot. Some attorneys who come to Auxana, but actually end up being better fit for just a job, an employee role in a company or in a law firm, more the first law firms. But I spend a lot of time talking to them, and look, it's personal. There are financial decisions you have to make and family decisions you have to make. And I feel I share a lot about this just from my personal experience. And I tell people you have to go through this personal analysis yourself. For me, I left my firm very soon after I had my first daughter. So actually becoming a mom, even though, yes, I've taken on more risk and work more now, it's on my terms and it's totally different for that reason. I needed to have that more control over my life than was previously the case because of becoming a mom. So, as a parent, I think you go through a lot of this anyway. And that's part of it is, how much time do I want to spend with my family? Am I comfortable working late nights so I can go be with my kids at breakfast and dinner time? Am I comfortable working weekend mornings? Right. But, you kind of are able to spread out. Quick side note, I do not believe in the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I think that is bullshit. So you can bleep me out. So anyway, but the point is, like, are you the type of person who can look personally and say, like, okay, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 is crap. So can I work in this way, have this independence and control, not be managed, and make that successful? And you got to look at your personal and your family life when you're making those decisions. I mean, that was a huge driver for me, putting aside all of the, like, yes, this is something that's broken and I know the solution to it. There was that personal element of it as well that was really important. And then financial is another huge thing, right? Like my family, we have health insurance through my husband's company. I talk to a lot of attorneys when they, are thinking about leaving a business or a law firm, and that's a huge issue for them. And it may be something you can't get over at the moment, right? And that's fine. It's not for everybody. And so I think, looking at those personal and financial motivators, you have to do that. Obviously, I spent a year doing it. So let's also be clear. It doesn't happen overnight. I spent a full year thinking about that and figuring it out and assessing my own comfort levels. And most people don't have that luxury. They have to make it a little bit quicker, but don't rush into something necessarily unless COVID has upended a lot of people's situations. So it may actually be a good time to say, okay, maybe these other opportunities fell through. So what am I going to do on my own? And that's a huge motivator for me, right? Like, go out and do something. You don't have to not just sit on your hands.
I think one thing that you do very well, and this is something that if you're listening out there, you have to be aware of. I've worked with many entrepreneurs, and it's very easy to say that their business runs them, not them running their business. That is not you, but that is something that creating a business is one thing, but creating a disruptive business with, sometimes with the chaos, the urgency which it invites can put an extraordinary amount of pressure on you. And I just think you have to know yourself. Are you able to run the business and not let the business run you? I think you do that very well, but you're very disciplined about it. So congratulations again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I talk to a lot of people about that. And to be very clear, things in my world may happen more slowly, but I actually got some great advice from an investor, runs a big fund, and he's doing a lot. This was years ago. And it's one of those little gems, that sticks with you. And I had not left I don't think I'd launched any of my companies. And I was just talking to him about what I was doing, or maybe I had launched Nimbus. And I said, "Oh, how do you do everything you're doing?" And he goes, "Beth, it takes longer. It just takes longer. And I'm okay with that. And the people who are working with me are okay with that. I'm still not 100% okay with that, but it's a fact, right? I'm an outsourced general counsel to companies. I have obligations to my clients. I have obligations to my family, to my daughters, and I have a startup. If I were to let the two things on the other end, right, the clients and the startup, run my life, then I would be failing as a mom. And I'm not willing to do that. So it takes balance, and it takes disciplined balance, and it takes understanding that at your core level, because otherwise you're going to beat yourself up every day. And don't get me wrong, I have days where I beat myself up. And those days are not great, because you shouldn't do that, right? And so that's where the discipline comes. Like, life goes on, right? Like, you've got to be disciplined. And I actually had someone tell me recently, because they asked me, I think the question was, how are you not insane? And I said, well, I don't work between the hours of 4 and 9 most days. I don't work. I don't have my phone. It's off. It's gone.
Wow. That's awesome.
I'm with kids. And they said, that's why you're not insane. That's why you're having success, because you set those boundaries with your clients and with your colleagues at the startup and with everyone else. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to give as much during those other times, right? And it's counterintuitive, but there's a great book called When, I think by Daniel Pink. And I wish I had the quote in front of me because it's so good. But he basically said, everyone thinks amateurs take breaks, but it's the opposite. Professionals take breaks. Amateurs don't. So that's another thing that stuck with me a lot. And look, if you're chugging around trying to work 80, 100-hour weeks, and you're not taking breaks, and you're not taking time for your family and yourself, you're going to fail. So you may as well discipline yourself and figure out a different way.
Man, this has been a great conversation. I know you have a hard out pretty soon. Speaking of quotes, I just got to tell you, I thank you for reminding me, because I'm reading a book about generals and personality. Like, we did a summit. I talked about the Fowley Gap. Last night, I was reading a little bit about General Patton, and this author was describing him. And I swear to God, Beth, I found the greatest description. I want this on my tombstone. Okay, you ready? You ready?
Yes.
Effortlessly insubordinate.
I love that. That's really
I was
good.
like, that's me. Totally. Love it.
That's great. I think I'll sign up for that with you.
So before we go, it's a season of Halloween. Any movie recommendations? Any book anything good? You got
well, now I have to give like Halloween ones. So we love Halloween. I love Halloween. My daughters love Halloween. House is fully decorated for Halloween. Movies that we have to watch every year: Nightmare Before Christmas. Jack Skellington is a favorite. Hocus Pocus, come on, and Ghostbusters.
Oh, Ghostbusters, so good.
Like, absolutely have to watch. Actually, like more than once, leading up to Halloween.
My best friend of mine lives in New York City, and years ago, his brother loves Halloween, loves it, and they dress up, and all the friends go out, and they went downtown New York to go to a party. And remember, they love Halloween, so my friend calls his brother and said, "Hey, I just saw the scariest movie ever. It's called Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." So he took his brother took his friends to go see this movie. 2 hours later, my buddy, got a call, and his brother and his friends were threatening to kill him. It's the crappiest horror movie ever. The best brother on brother trick, and it ruined his whole Halloween night.
Okay, well now I have to give you a short story. So I think it was freshman year in undergrad. This was like close to when The Ring came out. So I don't know if you remember the movie The Ring. Oh my God. So I'm in a dorm room, and you know how crappy dorm rooms are, right? So there's like, it's one room and then the hallway, and there was like a vent, like an air conditioning vent. So it was something that could be removed and you could come in and out of the room.
Uh-oh.
We're like sitting, there was a couch, we're sitting watching this movie, and someone decides to sneak in the one room. So you think that it's only the door, right? Which would let light in from the hallway. No. Figures out how to remove this vent, crawls in, and perfectly timed as the girl is like coming out of the TV, like behind us. Oh my God. I don't know how I didn't crap my pants.
At least took a year off your life. Oh, that's crazy.
So scary. And now I can never watch that movie again.
Well, happy Halloween to you and your family. And again, hey, thank you for being a part of this. This has been a great conversation. Disruption is so important. And I tell you, I think you gave some great advice and feedback on if you want to be disruptive, listen to find Beth Lebowitz. And by the way, how do people find you, Beth?
Well, you can find me. So my law firm is Nimbus Legal, and I'm founder of Auxana. So you can find us at auxana.co, auxana.co, and you can reach out to us there. And Kevin, you're amazing. You know how I feel about you. I since we met, I think it's just, again, it's every conversation has been so inspiring and enlightening. And I love how you think outside of the box and really, push the envelope in a lot of different ways. So thanks for having me. Congratulations on
You're so nice. You're awesome, Beth. I love hanging out with you. Again, thank you. And with that, we'll say to everyone, good night and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe to iTunes and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Additionally, you can head over to my website, kevinblack.co. That's kevinblack.co to learn more. See you next week.